when I was in medical
You
school.
didn't have cell phones or TikTok or internet or ICE agents coming in here and taking away patients and staff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of The Pitt, Season 2, Episode 14. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek, as usual. And today on the podcast, Noah Wyle gave an interview to Variety.com in advance of him getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So he's doing some PR for that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that happens in Episode 14 of The Pitt. And then if we have time at the end, we will get to some of your reactions and feedback that you can email us at decodingtv@gmail.com or leave comments at youtube.com/decodingtv. Let's start with this. Noah Wyle gave an interview to Variety.com, and the headline of the interview is "On Negotiating with HBO Over the Pitt ICE Storyline, Season 3's Time Jump, and Why Paramount Buying Warner Brothers is Not Good for Labor." End quote. We're not going to go into the whole conversation here, but there are a couple of Pitt-related details that I thought were interesting. First of all, he talked a little bit about how this ICE storyline that we discussed, right, and what happened with that, and described it as a negotiation. And he says, quote, here's what he has to say. Here's what Noah Wyle has to say about the ICE storyline. The negotiation was being driven by political reasons, creative reasons, fear, uncertainty, all sorts of legitimate reasons. I'll be honest and say that I was concerned about the edits we were making initially. When I saw what we had done, I actually think we arrived at something more elegant and a little bit more restrained, which leaves a little bit more ambiguity in it that we may have started out with. I think it's healthier for the storyline in the long run. It ended up being show the bear, don't poke the bear in a lot of ways, which is enough because the context came out after we filmed that episode. We didn't have to do half of what we had done that had already been imprinted into the minds of most Americans, end quote. I just think this is interesting because, Patrick, basically what we got was the subtle version, it sounds like, of what they were originally going to do. I think ICE does not come off well in this season of The Pitt. But it seems like what they were originally planning was perhaps more extreme. We had heard that from the actors that maybe there's going to be more details with nuance with the different agents being on different sides. And so maybe like there's a lot of stuff that just got cut out of this plot line. But yeah, didn't know if you had any reaction to that, Patrick.
No, it makes me think that for all the hand-wringing over how it was all going to turn out, they must have started from a point that is like much more extreme.
Right?
Because where it ended up, I think you and I keep like, this all seems like this was a bunch of much ado about nothing.
Right.
Like,
the reporting about it seemed like, oh, this is a very standard The Pitt storyline about ICE. That's what we felt like.
And
right.
I think regardless of one's politics or how you feel about like how ICE has been deployed over the past year or so, like I don't know that you could, even if you are a Trump supporter, look at that and go like, yeah, see, yeah, you know what, like, yeah, there's a real rah rah. Like I could watch this episode and be like, got it, boys. Like maybe you believe in their mission, but there's nothing about the way the show illustrates how they're going about it that could be construed in a positive light, which, like you said, does make me. I don't think we're ever going to get this. Like, I don't know if they're ever going to do like Pitt box sets where there's any, like, we don't do behind the scenes features anymore. We don't get deleted scenes. That's something that's just been eliminated from the way that we, like, consume sort of like culture and media these days. But it's always funny because there's a bit in it's when they're like doing some of the digitizing, and I forget which character moves over and like goes beep beep. Who was that? It was well, whoever does it. Someone asked them about it, was kind of felt like there was a little bit of like improv, and they're like, oh, did that make it into the show? And you know, because it's like any other set, like there are scripts they're following, but like there is a little bit like it sounds like some of the whimsy and comedy like comes out of just normal acting and like just being on a set for hours and hours and trying different things. And so I wonder, my speculation after like reading bits like that is that if you were involved in that plot line, shot all of the material, your recollection of how hard that went, and if you hear, hey, they're going to start playing with it, could feel like it is really getting sanded down. And it sounds like that did happen, but what they ended up with was still powerful.
Yes.
And I think deeply critical of the role ICE has played in our lives.
True to the ethos of The Pitt, for sure.
Yeah.
So there has been speculation that there's going to be a big time jump in the next season of The Pitt, and Noah Wyle did address that. He says The only time jump we're interested in is making is to get into a different weather season, to get into a slightly different mode of cases that come with a change in weather. If that was summer, then what happens in the winter when you get cold, snow, and black ice? End quote. So
that's very funny.
Probably no major time jump, but my guess is the next season will probably take place during winter. We'll see.
In that interview, which is Variety, there's a note in there that the interview is taking place outside of the writer's room for season 3, which presumably, we'll start filming sometime this summer.
Yeah. As we kick off, though, I do just want to say that, as we get into the final 2 episodes of the show and talk about it, Patrick and I did not know whether or not this would work as part of Decoding TV to recap the Pit, whether there'd be enough interest. But it's proven to be one of our most popular / successful things that we've done on youtube.com/@decodingtv. And we've gotten such wonderful feedback at decodingtv@gmail.com for it as well. So I do just want to thank all of our listeners and viewers for following along with us covering the show. I do think what's great about the show is it's apparently going to come back in a year, and so I do think this will be an integral part of Decoding TV moving forward. Assuming Decoding TV moves forward, for as long as we're doing the podcast, we'll probably be covering the Pit, and as long as the Pit is on.
And give us Night Shift, and we don't have to cover any other shows. We're just
right.
Good. We're just a Pit cast.
Maybe we should start covering the Chicago shows, and just be like Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, and all those things. Anyway,
well, like when the Pit is, if we got Night Shift, then you would begin covering roughly half the year with like Pit. And in between those, like, I'm missing the Pit. I like, let's do a little flavor, like try like this little drama over here and just watch one episode. Like, ooh, like what's happening on this 911 show? Why are they in space?
All right, Patrick, let's get to our conversation about the penultimate episode of the Pit season 2. So in this episode, I gotta be honest, none of the cases this episode were particularly compelling. Like, we have a few new cases and they all seemed like fairly throwaway, with one big exception, right? But in this episode of the Pit, Robbie is putting pressure on the day shift to finish up scanning all their charts for the day. And let's talk about some of the main cases, right? So there is the case of Edith Lynch, who has right side chest pain for an hour and then goes into VTAC. It turns out that the leads were probably placed inappropriately on her chest by some male EMS workers, because whatever reason, they're worried about touching this woman's breasts. They didn't want a sexual harassment case, whatever. Basically, this woman almost died because of woke, Patrick. And that's a shame. She almost dies, and then Robbie gives them an extremely hard time about it publicly, which is just like, wow, that is really, really harsh.
These were so inferior, you might as well not put them on at all. What were you afraid of? Her bra?
But Al-Hashimi seems fine with that, so, good for him. Anyway, any reaction to the case of Edith Lynch, Patrick?
Well, did those two guys deserve the dressing down publicly? Probably. The problem is, like, I'm so used to Robbie being completely unhinged and out of pocket over the course of the season that I don't know. Now, I think this is to the show's credit. It makes you question all moments where he is doing something that could be a teachable moment, where he is being the mentor, he is being the leadership figure. But I find myself questioning his judgment, his choices, and my initial reaction to which is like, well, of course Dr. Robbie is right. Like, he's always looking out for the best of people. Well, over the course of season 2, it's like a 15-episode exercise. I'm like, this guy is messed up. So when he does that, like, is this the right thing he should be doing? And like, fortunately, like right off screen, Al-Hashimi comes in. It's like, it is the right thing he should be doing. Like, okay, great. You also seem to have your own issues, which we'll get into. But I did need an outside judgment call. Like, Patrick can no longer be fully held responsible for how he feels about Dr. Robbie's teachable moments, because increasingly they're bad, not helpful. And so it makes for a fun dynamic, because I do think it is the show pushing against like what they spent a season and a half building up, which like an implicit trust in this character. They're like, when they go loud, they're going loud for a reason.
Right.
But then over the course of season 2, it's like, man, I don't know. Maybe that was not the way to do it.
I'm gonna say I think it was pretty unprofessional. You know, like regardless of what Al-Hashimi thinks, I don't think he should have done it in that way. But it's fine for him to have to be passionate about, this woman not dying.
Is he passionate about it, or is he just angry and found a new outlet for it?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like that's sort of where it comes from. Is is this tuned to 11 because it demands 11, or does he need an outlet for what he is unable to recognize in himself, and that is just being blasted out to everyone within a blast radius of himself.
There is the case of Lyman Payne, a 53-year-old individual who suffers an MVC, which stands for motor vehicle collision. They also say something called no ETOH on his breath, which I believe means ethanol, like you don't smell alcohol on his breath. I'm not 100% sure about that. Anyway, he has a partial dislocation of 2 vertebrae in his neck, and they need to get him into surgery, but they don't have time because his condition starts worsening immediately. So Langdon saw neurosurgery do this thing called a closed reduction once in the ICU. Didn't do it himself, just saw it once. And Dr. Robbie says, hey, doctor the fuck up, man. You got to do this thing.
This is right here, right now. This guy's going to be a living head if we do nothing. I could paralyze him. Doctor the fuck up.
Now, I have looked up what a closed reduction is according to Medline Plus. Closed reduction is a procedure to set or reduce a broken bone without cutting the skin open. The broken bone is put back in place, which allows it to grow back together in better alignment. It works best when it is done as soon as possible after the bone breaks, end quote. So that's what's done here. I got to say, this is fucking harrowing to watch, Patrick.
Dude, I'm not the least gory of any.
Yeah.
Like the ratio to me being squeamish and squirming in my seat to level of gore, this one is the most out of whack. Like it's just a guy holding a neck, and yet given the stakes for Langdon and given the stakes for this person, and the air of stress in the room, my wife, I'm putting my hand over my eyes, but there's nothing to hide from. It's not like a stripped hand with no skin on it, which I've seen already in this show.
Yeah, in this episode. Or different kind of stripped hand in this episode. But Patrick, when I was watching this episode, it really made me feel like I kind of understand the difference between the Pitt and ER, because in ER, Langdon totally would have paralyzed this guy, in my opinion, right? Because that's the kind of show that's the kind of stuff that show would do all the time. Is a doctor messes up and it has life altering impacts for this other person that and it made me realize in the Pit, by and large, things work out. Yes, every now and then, if somebody makes a mistake and somebody almost dies, but in general, even when a character makes a mistake, they're usually able to salvage it somehow. And so I don't know, it's just I'm glad, because it stresses me out less, that things work out. But it is notable, I think, that the Pit, I think the Pit loves its characters a lot, and it doesn't force its characters to do horrifying things, that will haunt them the rest of their lives in general. At least not on screen. We know that, with Robbie, that's all happening off screen, but in general, it doesn't have. And so I'm wondering if season 3 is going to change any of that, or if they're just going to keep doing it in this mode, which would also be fine. But I was super stressed out by this, and then I was like, oh yeah, in the Pit, things generally work out, and so that's just a thing I realized.
Yeah. So, I also, if any medical professionals listen to the podcast, could write in. This has happened a couple of times, I think twice this season, in which, how often, maybe I don't want to know the answer to this, but there have been a couple of instances in this season in particular where it's I don't know, I saw a YouTube video of a guy doing a thing, and I know it's I read it in a medical journal, I saw, but a lot of the times when we're watching the different diagnoses or the steps taken, sure, there is a bit of improvisation and trying to figure, there's an artistry, a creativity to arriving at healing people. But there's a lot of we do this because it is proven that doing this does that. Twice now, it's the one when Al-Hashimi did the cut in the throat.
Yeah.
This one with the knife, I don't know, man. Let's roll the ball. Let's see what happens. And given that one of the major subplots this season, one that I don't think panned out very well. One of the few things I didn't care for this season was about like having to go, like you're being sued, like the hospital's being sued because of your actions in a case. What happens when like everyone in the room's like, so like what confidence level do we have on that working? Like, not great. Did we do it anyway? We try. Like, how does that lawsuit work? You know what I mean? Like, how often is it? Let's roll the dice and see what happens. Now, in both instances, it's like this person's either going to die or be paralyzed anyway. So they set up a bit of a binary for the doctors. But it does make me wonder how often is there a, hey man, like I saw this. Should we like give it a shot sort of situation? It's just sort of How much is that? How much is that dramatization?
How often are they doing stuff they saw on a tape?
I feel like to me this is like a once a year, like something that maybe happens in a real hospital. Maybe not. Maybe it's more often than you think.
Decodingtv@gmail.com or comment at youtube.com/decodingtv. Anyway, very riveting scene, and obviously had some really character stakes for Langdon. Probably like the centerpiece of the episode, I would say. All right, so there's a bunch of like filler cases this episode that really didn't have that much to go in. You know, for now, like we don't know if any of these are going to lead anywhere. There's the case of Rita Wolcott, who used a dumpster to climb onto like to a party and then fell 6 feet onto concrete. The Hansons family reunion. We come back. This guy's hand gets nearly cut off from a tug of war rope, but he can't really feel it due to diabetes. Don't know if that's going to lead anywhere. There's a big fight at Zazu's sports bar, where one of them gets a flag shoved into his chest, and the other guy has like a slash on his face with a little bottle of Rolling Rock in his face. There's the case of Eldridge Jerry, I think, who is shooting a .22 caliber pistol in the air with a pot on his head for protection, which didn't work out well, and he ends up intoxicated and with an injury on his head. So yeah, I mean, literally, I don't even know if there's anything we talk about in any of those. Then there are some follow-ups from previous weeks. We see Orlando Diaz gets transferred to the ICU. Robbie makes a very crass remark about self-harm that I want to say psychologist. I'm not sure if it's psychologist or like a psychiatrist picks up on and gives him, you know.
He's like a social worker.
Yeah, social worker, right. Doctor, go ahead.
No. You finish the wrap-up.
Yeah. So then Dr. Al-Hashimi gives the inhaler guy from last episode an inhaler. And then the sunburn woman is finally treated by Dr. McKay. So kind of sad that we're not going to see that character around in the background of every single scene. So those are like some of the main cases. Now we still have to talk about some of the Pitt storylines, but yeah, Patrick, any other thoughts on any of the cases for this week?
Well, one thing, I think this is structurally inherent to the Pitt and the fact that we are going to be in this single location. We are not going to travel to other parts of the hospital. And like the structure of this emergency room is that there are constantly going to be people flowing in, like new things happening. It sort of then falls on the show to like kind of always be introducing a new thing that happened, like someone new that is injured, that sort of interrupts the flow of the show. At times, I think that's really interesting. Like at least it's like used to great dramatic effect where like characters cannot finish conversations because they have to then pause that, put their feelings on hold, compartmentalize those, go be a doctor. And other times, like in this episode, now to some degree, I feel like it's the show wrapping up, you know, stories like check mark, like, let's get these done as we're heading to the end. It's leave no dangling threads. On the other, because the show won't allow the characters to go anywhere else, which I don't know how much of that is a function of this is how it would be if you worked in this. There's literally no downtime. But sometimes we see people in a break room, like eating a snack. But this show doesn't let people really do that. Like there's no 20 minutes to yourself where the characters and the show can breathe. There is always an interruption within minutes of something happening. And so sometimes it feels like the show being, even if it is true to life of what it would be like to work in a place like this, the show feels like it's kind of choking itself sometimes. It's like, oh, it's been 90 seconds since a case came in. What do you got? Like, Joe, what did you pitch last week? And like, you shot a bullet in the air and it hit. All right, yeah, put that in. And so,
to be fair, Patrick, maybe all those plot lines I just mentioned will have some really satisfying conclusions next week.
I doubt. I really feel like the cases are taking a backseat. I agree. In the next episode,
the cases are taking a backseat for sure to the Pitt story, like the Pitt drama that's occurring in this episode.
There is just, I do feel like sometimes the show gets the ratio a little bit off on like, it feels like this impulse to introduce a new case all the time. And sometimes I think it'd be okay if it didn't.
Having said that, Patrick, this is one of the shortest episodes of the season. It's like only 40 minutes and so 41 minutes. And so even then it still feels a little bit like filler. I do agree. It feels a little bit odd for a penultimate episode.
I wonder how long the last episode is. Because they don't,
we'll see.
This isn't a syndicated show. It doesn't have to be 42 minutes to fit into an hour format. They choose to do that because that's the show that they're making. But I'll be fascinated to see where it ends up.
All right, let's talk about the Pitt drama that occurs this episode. Robbie tells Duke about the aortic aneurysm situation, and Duke needs to think about it later. Robbie's bike is clipped in the parking lot by an ambulance. He's very upset about it. Duke offers to fix it for him tomorrow, but Robbie still wants to get on the road tonight. Duke tries to talk him down from the ledge. It becomes very clear that Robbie is interested in self-harm. And I really like what Duke said. He said, that's your final lesson for these kids, right? Like you've been doing so much to teach them. Like, is that your final lesson? I really like the way he brought that lesson home. So, but yes, Patrick, we've talked about this Robbie self-harm storyline, and I think you and I and some of our listeners on youtube.com/decodingtv have said that they're kind of drawing this out a little bit too much, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to it. I did think that the Duke Robbie interaction is a nice one though.
Well, at least the Duke one, like McKay constantly piping, like, which I think she does again, like this episode is like, at least when Duke comes forward to say something, it is coming from someone who's very important to Robbie. Like it's a new voice that can take, a new tact, and that feels different as these emotions feel like for Robbie are coming, like he should leave now, but he's inventing excuses. He's running out of excuses not to leave. And so I do think Duke being there to issue some real thoughts is at least feels fresh, even though obviously, yes, it does feel like the show is really harping this self-harm point with Robbie, which is an interesting arc for the character, but yes, is like becoming all consuming with the show.
Let me run through a bunch of these. There's a lot of these. And, if there's any you want to talk about, we can. But we see, some nurses are starting to leave and come back. Monica and Donnie leave. Monica left without any explicit acknowledgement of her MAGA background. So I guess that is not going to play out this season. Maybe next season.
I feel like IMO that is some of the cut content from this show.
Perhaps.
Because it would be explicitly someone expressing counter political views that I could imagine some people sniping at her about and causing some tension. That's just me, but I feel very much like that might be part of the cut elements of the show.
Robbie chastises Dr. Javadi about posting TikToks from work, but later McKay explains that she's just trying to find out where Nurse Jessie is. Shame on you, Dr. Robbie. Maybe let Javadi finish speaking. Caleb gives Robbie a hard time about joking about self-harm. We've already talked about that. Whitaker loses his badge, then later buys an older lady a lift, but it results in a $250 surcharge and a complaint on his account.
Damn, it was a sweet old lady.
Who apparently had some racist and abusive things to say right before puking in the back.
This is why you should never let anyone else take your lift. Whitaker doesn't like being talked down to by Langdon, gives him a hard time about it, and Langdon respects him for standing up for himself. Langdon also has to do a urine screen. I'm curious if the urine screen is going to trigger something because of the Advil that he took, but my guess is no, but we'll see. And then in the culminating scene of the episode, Dr. Al-Hashimi presents Dr. Robbie with her own case.
Bruh, is this you?
We learned that she's had a history of seizure disorder, and that seizure activity followed from viral meningitis. He just starts reading the case. We don't get all the full details, but he asks, like, is this you? And we have every reason to believe that it is her. I guess the whole day was an elaborate test to see whether he could be trusted to help her diagnose and give her a good prognosis there. But I did think this is a meaningful connection when, they say, hey, I've come to trust your opinion. She says, like, I've come to trust your opinion. He says, like, the same is true of you. And I did feel that. Like we were debating at the beginning of the season, hey, are these people going to be at each other's throats all season? Because that would be pretty not fun. But by the end, they really seem to understand each other, and that's nice. Anyway, yeah, Patrick, any thoughts on any of these Pitt storylines?
Well, I think what this sets up for Al-Hashimi in a different way is a question that was in front of Robbie and other characters in the Pit in season 1, which is these people are flawed, like, and what of their flaws rise to them not being competent enough to help people. Like we've seen multiple times over the course of the season. I assume this is an extension of what Robbie is looking at here, where she sort of disassociates. Like there's a pause. Like, it happened in the previous episode. It happened when she fucking Baby Jane. Like, what happened to that? So important at the beginning of the season. What happened to Baby Jane? Where is
It's Patrick's favorite storyline, for those who don't know.
I cannot wait. My wife has a joke at the beginning of every episode. Like, can't wait to find out what happened to Baby Jane this week. Like, nothing happened this week. Not even an update from like somebody on a chart. Like the way she pauses is a little scary. Like if she has to make like a really important like time of the essence life decision, now that he has that information, what does he do to it? What do they do with it? I mean, Al-Hashimi now is in the loop on Langdon and like what really happened. This is, I think, between the drug test, it does feel like we're leading to a lot of explosive confrontations over people's inner truths. And what does that mean? Like, what does that mean about their ability to be a good doctor? I mean, feels like that is a lot of what this season is scratching at is everyone has their demons. At what point does that demon become something that does not allow you to do the work? And how much do we not talk about? Because not talking about it means they can continue doing the work because they're a net positive as a contributor to this room, to society. And we expect our doctors to be perfect, but like at the end of the day, much like as we talked about in the rehearsal, like there are reasons you wouldn't talk about things that are you're feeling or experiencing because that's just not how we expect or will treat those people if they present themselves as full and honest. So I feel like we're headed towards some really interesting conversations in the final episode of The Pit about those very topics.
Indeed. All right, let's get to Medical Worker of the Week, which, by the way, we did get a comment this week from somebody. Let me see if I have the comment where Jay Albor writes in, or Jorge, I think is his name. I'm loving this season, but gotta say, the Robbie's mental health storyline is getting real repetitive. Also, side note, employee of the week. It rolls off the tongue much better than medical worker. And if you're not an employee, you're disqualified as far as I'm concerned. End quote. I don't know that I'm going to, honestly, I'm going to say part of the appeal of the segment is how hard it is to say. Just going to put that out there. So, medical worker of the week. My medical worker of the week is Dr. Langdon for stepping in and doing a closed reduction, not even from having...
doctoring the fuck up.
He's doctored the fuck up, guys. He doctored the fuck up. And, taking this guy's life into his hands and reminding himself why he got into this in the first place and earning Robbie's affection, which we all know that's the most healthy way to do it, is by doing dangerous medical procedures on people. My medical worker of the week is Dr. Langdon. How about you, Patrick Klepek?
So it's very funny that the person in the comments would bring up, like, what are the exact qualifications for this topic? Because my medical worker of the week does not work at the hospital, but it is Duke.
Death can't be changed.
Hey, I know the surgery is scary.
I'm not talking about me.
We talked a bit about this earlier. Sometimes our friends...
What? Duke is not... He doesn't even work in the Pit. This is... I call shenanigans on this choice.
Well, because I don't think no one is really willing to say to Robbie what he needs to hear in the plainest language possible. And sometimes you need someone in your life to do that. And there's like all sorts of reasons that medical professionals or your colleagues have to dance around what they might want to say because of the relationship they have with you, whether it's working or personal. And there was real bravery in Duke spelling it out. Let's stop talking in code. Like, let's stop talking about going on the road. Like, what is this about? And Duke ends up being a therapist, someone, or honestly, maybe not a therapist as much as a priest, like a confessional. Like, this is what I truly am thinking and how I feel about my situation. And if Duke wasn't there, there isn't anybody I think he would have actually verbalized that to. And I think there's real power in him finally verbalizing what everyone's insinuating. And so that's why I thought Duke rose to the moment. Sometimes in all of our lives, we must be our friends, medical professionals and therapists when they need us the most. And I thought Duke honorary medical worker of the week.
Really creative usage of the term medical worker of the week, Patrick, but I'll allow it.
I don't think you do, but what are you going to do? Make me do it again?
All right, before we wrap up, let's do a few comments from youtube.com/@decodingtv. Of course, you can always comment at decodingtv.com for paid subscribers or email us at decodingtv@gmail.com. Wanted to read a couple comments that I thought were quite astute. Kathy Astrom writes in to youtube.com/@decodingtv. The scene with McKay and Santos from last episode is very revealing. Earlier in the day, Santos told Garcia that she believed that everyone was giving her the cold shoulder because she outed Langdon as a drug abuser, but maybe people just don't like her attitude towards her patients. Maybe she can stop blaming others for her own personality traits that aren't attractive. I hope that her season 3 character arc is her letting Whitaker rub off on her and how she views her patients, end quote. So Kathy is referring to the scene from last episode where Santos basically said all of her patients are dumbasses, right? And McKay was like, geez, that's harsh. Victor Prada writes in, McKay actually complimented Santos that she has a sixth sense about the unusual cases, and yet Santos turns it around and triples down on her ultra judgy take on the patients and her job, end quote. So, yeah, that's a harsh read of Santos, but fair, in my opinion. Fair. That maybe it's not because you turned in Langdon, but maybe because you're an asshole. I'll let the listeners decide for themselves how they feel about that one.
I am. It feels like we're not going to get payoff for a lot of work that has been done with Santos this season. It feels like it's a very much a multi-season arc with this character. Like, like when she's like holding, like, I think it's the medical scissors, right? Like, we get evidence that she has, engaged in self-harm. She's falling asleep, like nodding off. Like, there's a lot going on in her personal life that I think is her projecting unresolved, like, inner parts of her that then manifest as her lashing out. It doesn't feel like, I don't think she truly feels this way. It's just, it's a way that, like, her own, like, trauma and stress and anxiety and self-doubt project out to the rest of the world. And so there's so much for the show they got to land the plane, ride the bike with Robbie and Langdon and Al-Hashimi in the finale. Right. So I don't think we're going to have time for Santos to have, but I think a lot of work
it could be a Santos focused episode next week. Who knows? But I agree with you. If it's not, then it's going to be season 3 until we get resolution.
I feel like that's a season 3 thing. And especially if we're getting indications that season 3 is not going to be a huge time jump.
Right.
It does, allow for a world where we pick up with Santos, who has done a lot. Like, I think is a much more interesting character in season 2. I think
absolutely
they've done a really great job of, however you felt about her in season 1, like really showing, like underscoring, like how smart and capable and interesting she is as a doctor, while also like allowing her to retreat in some of her worst instincts as sort of a person, as a colleague, as a friend. But I wonder how that will continue to manifest in next season.
Creative username 333 writes into youtube.com/@decodingtv. I don't think there's going to be any resolution with the baby. I think it's just there to add depth to the Al-Hashimi character. I'm pretty sure every time Al-Hashimi has had one of her quote-unquote moments, it's been when she's treating a baby or kid. I think there'll be some sort of reveal about her losing or having a sick child of her own that makes it hard for her to deal with young patients. Perhaps this also explains why she used to work in the VA, so she'd only have to deal with older patients, end quote. Now, I think like seizure disorder is going to be part of the explanation, but I did just like this, especially after the events of this episode, but I did just like this theory because I do think there's some truth to that. And I do wonder if that's going to play into the final reveal of what's going on with Al-Hashimi at all. So anyway, just wanted to mention that theory. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.